I'm going to go through two primary scenarios here. Now, the first scenario that I'm going to be kind of walking through is a banking console case workflow. So this is basically going to be the process of a community user logging in, scheduling an appointment with a banking representative, and then kind of going from the Salesforce side as that banking representative logging in as that user, and then performing some actions there. So let me go ahead and open up our test builder here, and we can see this in action. So as I mentioned, first and foremost, we have our initial connection, which is going to be logging in as that banker. So we're just going to log into our console application. Okay, so we're logged in here as Justin Chen, who is our relationship banker. That's his persona in this particular demonstration. Now we're going to be logging into the community where we'll be scheduling that appointment. So in case you're wondering, if you've never seen Provar before, what's happening here? These connections that are happening, these are configured connections. So basically within the Provar interface, you can create connections to Salesforce, of course, using, username, password, OAuth, MFA, etc. But once you have that admin connection created, you can actually use that to log in as all these different personas without having to create additional credentials or anything like that. You just need to know their username and what application you want to navigate to, and Provar takes care of the rest. So this one logs me in straight into the community here, and now it's going to go through and basically create that appointment. So it'll happen pretty quickly here, but it's basically going through this process of configuring all the appointment details, selecting the appointment type. Now it's going to go to the next page here where it's going to perform a search for a particular territory. So we'll see it selected there. We're going to select the first branch here, and it's going to continue on, and we're going to assign this to Justin Chen, set our appointment time, and it's already been set. So now we have a kind of a step here that's waiting for that appointment to confirm. So now it's been confirmed. So as soon as that appointment is confirmed, it's going to be, of course, sent over to the banker. So the scheduled appointment is completed. So now we can switch back over and continue our process from here. And I'm going to pause as soon as this step happens here, because I do want to cover how we're getting to this record immediately. So something that Provar helps you with natively, and this is not Experience Cloud specific or anything like that, is that we have this capability to capture information from the screen, but also from the back end. So we can perform a SOQL query. If I go here, this SOQL query that we're performing as part of our test case using a drag and drop step from Provar, we basically just want to select our appointment that we just created. And we do see that it returns a row here. So the query was successful. It gives me a row back. And if I look at my return value here, I can see it pulls in my account ID, the scheduled start time in a date time format. We get our start time and our start date and all of that. So we're pulling in all that information from a SOQL query. And the reason we're doing that is because we're operating as two different personas here. So as we create the appointment in the community, we perform the SOQL query as the banker to basically just say, okay, what record do I need to navigate to from that side of things? So it's more of a testing specific thing, but in this case, this allows us to navigate directly to that record in the UI. So this is the scheduled appointment that we just created. We captured it from SOQL, and then we're able to navigate to it automatically. So that's something that Provar handles out of the box. Okay, so now we're going to go in and basically do some assertions. We're going to validate the territory is correct as we set in the appointment. Then we're going to go in and change the owner to the correct banker in this case, because I believe we just set it to any available banker whenever we were scheduling it from the end user's perspective. And we can even add additional steps here. So just to kind of show you how Provar Test Builder works, I paused it really quickly. Basically, the way that our point-click test builder works is anything you want to interact with in the interface of your website, you just right-click on that element and click Add to Test Case. And what you'll see happen is that Provar will capture the element details over here in Test Builder, and basically it's staging a test step for you. So you need to tell Provar, okay, what do you want to do with this element? Do you want to check a checkbox? Do you want to set a field? Do you want to do an assertion, a validation, anything like that? So we can add steps like that to our test case, even though this test is already built. So it's very interactive in that sense. And you can also right click on any step in your test builder window and jump to different points in execution. So this makes debugging very easily to do and perform inside of Provar. Even if you're doing this kind of testing where you're going between two different personas, we can map steps as two different users and two different browsers at the same time, the same test case with no problem. Okay, so we verified that appointment. We've assigned it to the correct user. Now we're going to go through and activate this inline edit field where we're going to be basically just modifying a couple of values, checking the agenda, setting the description accordingly, and then saving the record. Okay, now we're going and we're just going to reschedule this appointment. So it came in at 12, so we're actually going to reschedule it for a different time here. So it's going to schedule it for 1:30 p.m. and we'll get a confirmation message here in just a moment. So once that appears, we'll have a validation to confirm that the service appointment is set, and we'll click finish. Okay, so now the reschedule has happened. This is kind of the back and forth and the end to end. It's very difficult to do this manually, right? Because you're logging in to different browsers, you're kind of going back and forth. Once you have automation for this, it makes it very easy. So now I can, I'll switch back to the other browser so you can see what's happening. And I've labeled my test steps, so you'll see this is happening in the community now. So now what's going to happen is it's going to go back to the community site. It's going to go to our appointments page and do a quick refresh here. And then it's going to click on that appointment. And then it's going to cancel that appointment. And the reason is after the reschedule, this particular user is not available during that time. So we're going to say unavailable at the scheduled time, click cancel here, and then confirm the cancellation. Once the cancellation is confirmed, we go back over into the banker side of things and we just confirm it on that end as well. So we're doing this bi-directional validation. So we're confirming that the status here is canceled and that the cancellation reason is appropriate. Now, one thing to note here on this test that we're running through, all the data that I'm using, all the text, all the dates, all the values, for some of these, they're statically set. For some of it, it's actually being pulled in from a spreadsheet from a data source. So we can make the entire test flow, the entire end-to-end process data-driven. So this allows us to cover a multitude of different scenarios very easily inside of Provar just by updating our spreadsheet and adding additional rows. And we can run through the test case in a loop and run through each row of data, basically allowing us to scale our testing very easily. And the more API, the more sockels that we use in our tests allows us to scale it even faster. So in this case, a lot of it's UI, but it still executes pretty quickly. But you can see that scenario there. So that was one example of an end-to-end example of Experience Cloud and Salesforce kind of working together. So our second example is going to be an insurance console case workflow. So this one's going to be slightly different. We're going to be raising a case and taking that case on as the insurance representative, the service agent in this case. So I'll go ahead and launch Test Builder, and we can see this one in action. Again, here we have two users that we're emulating. These are two different users, but this is all actually happening in the same org as before. It's just going to be a different community, a different user, and a different console application. Okay, so we've logged in as Tim Smith, and now we're going to go ahead and resume here and just log in as our other user. And I'll set a pause here just so it doesn't run through the entire section. Okay, so you see here we have a very different community site. Now there's a lot of different things that we can do on this particular community site. It's an insurance policyholder page. So basically we can use this to raise cases. We can also use this to file claims and things like that. There's a lot of different workflows that we could automate in this particular example. But this one, we're just raising a new case. So here we have it here. So we're just going to go ahead and resume and set those fields and click save. And it may take a minute here. So you'll notice a lot of these steps, they're kind of waiting for the page to load, or they're waiting for the next or the previous step to execute or complete before they're getting done. So we have a lot of dynamic waits inside of Provar that allow us to operate our test cases under a lot of different conditions. Because when you're automating a test, you could run it on your machine and it runs in a minute, and then you could run it on someone else's machine and it runs and it takes 5 minutes. So you need your test to be able to account for different performance and different load times. So Provar has that natively built into the platform. So a lot of our steps have these auto waits that are automatically kind of waiting for the page to load. You can set different values for that. So that's what's happening there. Now, in this example, we also extracted the case number. So once the case has been created, of course, we get a case number. So we're extracting that case number because later on, we're going to use that to access the case from the back end and take care of our data cleanup. But now let's go ahead and continue on to our back into our application here. So now we're going to log into our omnichannel. And once we're logged in, we should get a case coming in and we should be able to accept that case. Well, now my omnichannel is not wanting to perform. So this is the reason why we test things. Okay, so in this instance, what should be happening in this case, the case should come in through the omnichannel and we should accept that case. We see here the test failed because it's trying to accept a case that isn't there. So may not be able to complete this entire scenario in this example because the rest of it is basically doing some validations and performing a password reset for the user and closing out the case here. I'm not sure why the case isn't coming in this case. I could try to do a refresh and see if that resolves it. I actually don't see the case created here, interestingly enough. Okay, so 2697. Sorry. Give me 1 second here, just as a sanity check. Okay, there's the case. Just going to do a manual workaround here so we can finish the rest of this. Okay, so now we are officially the case owner. So we'll pretend that we've accepted that case. So normally it would take you to the case record page whenever you accept it from the omnichannel. For whatever reason, it's not coming in through there. It could be because the case origin is not the correct value in this case. So it could have been something that was changed on the back end. Anyhow, we'll go ahead and step through here. So let me jump to the next section of the test. And we will play this through. Okay, so we're just moving it to the next status here. So response has been received. So we're setting that as a status. And we're going to send login credentials, basically using this little button here to send this to our contact, Rachel Adams. So it's setting the status pick list here to waiting on customer and clicking save. So the status of this case will change and we'll be able to validate that on the end user side as well. And we'll just go ahead and mark this milestone over here completed. So the solution has been proposed. So it's going to check that milestone over there on the left-hand side. Okay, so now we're going back over to the community side of things. where we're going to be closing out this case. So I'll just go ahead and resume and setting the status to close. Everything's been done. User's happy. They close it from their end, which may or may not be the workflow for you, but in this case it is. So the case has been closed, so we can go back over to our service console and we can resume and mark our case milestone again here as completed for our case closed. And there's this nice little alert, which I also showed that Provar can handle those. So we have a little handle UI alerts feature that allows you to dismiss those if it's just something that pops up. So that's a Salesforce issue. Okay, so that's a full scenario. So we did have one little hiccup there with the omnichannel. It's probably because of the case origin not being the correct value. So that may be something on that end. However, we got around that. So, this is the reason why we test things, of course. So now the last bit here is our test data cleanup. So as I mentioned, we extracted that case number earlier on. So we're going to use that case number to perform a quick SQL query to retrieve the ID and then delete it. So that way we don't have any records outstanding. So being able to do this data cleanup is very good for testing, especially if you're doing a lot of automation. You want to make sure that you're cleaning up your org regularly. So if your automation takes care of it for you, we have these nice little finally steps inside of Provar. So the reason why these are good is that even if the test fails, if this record's been created, it'll still execute this step to delete it. So even if the case has been created but something else fails, it'll still go in and perform that cleanup for you.